Alright, so you wake up, alarm didn't go off, which is weird because nothing went off anywhere. You walk outside, and it's not like quiet Sunday morning empty, it's empty empty. Not one person, not one car, not one dude power walking his golden retriever and pretending it's for the dog's benefit. 8 billion people gone, overnight. Poof. You're it. You're the last one standing. And here's the kicker. You get maybe a full day of normal-ish life before things go sideways. And no, it's not zombies, it's not radiation, it's not some rock falling from space. It's your fridge. Because in about 48 hours, power plants across the entire planet are going to start shutting down one by one. Not because they ran out of fuel, just because nobody showed up for the night shift to flip the switch. Thanks a lot, Dave. We needed you today, man. Give it a week, the backup generators keeping hospitals alive go quiet too. Give it a month, cities start catching fire, not from bombs, from some guy's stove still on in a walk-up in Queens that nobody's around to turn off anymore. And here's the actual interesting question. Not how do you survive? The real question is, how long does it take the planet to erase us? Like completely, every trace. Spoiler, longer than you think, and also faster than you'd like. So let's break it down, hour by hour, because I did the math, and buddy, the math is wild.
Hour 1. Traffic lights are still working. Red, yellow, green, doing their thing for absolutely nobody. Somewhere on 5th Avenue right now, there's an intersection cycling through its lights 8 times a minute, serving 0 cars, and it's going to keep doing that faithfully for a solid week. That traffic light has more work ethic than most humans did on a Friday afternoon. Subway systems in big cities are still rolling on autopilot. Doors open, doors close. Stand clear of the closing doors, please. Stand clear for who, man? The whole New York City subway is running on schedule right now, every single train, and there's not one person on any platform to catch it. It's just you, and you're at home panic eating the last pint of ice cream in your freezer because deep down you know, now's the time.
Hour 6. The neighborhood cats already know something's up. Cats always know the apocalypse is happening before humans do. Honestly, they've known this whole time that they never really needed us. Now they've got the receipts. Dogs, on the other hand, dogs are losing it. A dog locked in an apartment, alone, no owner, that's the first real tragedy of the day. But don't worry, by nightfall, that dog's gonna find a way out, and dogs are gonna have one of the wildest plot twists in this entire story. We'll get there. Trust me, it's a good one. Meanwhile, over in the financial district, every stock ticker on Earth is still scrolling. Numbers going up, numbers going down, entire trillion-dollar markets flashing on giant screens in Times Square, in Shanghai, in London, for an audience of absolutely nobody. Somewhere, a trading algorithm just executed 4 million transactions in the last hour based on patterns that, quite frankly, no longer matter to a single living soul. And up above your head, literally above your head, there's about 9,000 active satellites still doing laps around the planet. GPS satellites still beaming down location data for phones that nobody's carrying anymore. The International Space Station is still orbiting too. And depending on exactly when the vanishing happened, there might be a handful of astronauts up there who just watched every human light on Earth's surface flicker out, one continent at a time from 400 kilometers up. Rough day for those guys. Really rough day. And down here on the ground, self-checkout machines are still beeping away in empty grocery stores, endlessly asking nobody to please place item in the bagging area. That machine is going to keep asking that question, on loop, until its battery finally dies, which, ironically, might make it the last functioning piece of customer service on planet Earth. Somewhere, a self-checkout kiosk is technically still working harder than most retail employees ever did, and it's doing it for an audience of 0. Vending machines are honestly the real MVPs here. Sealed, powered by tiny internal batteries, or just plugged into whatever grid's still limping along, some of them are going to keep humming for weeks, patiently holding on to their last bag of chips for a customer that's never showing up. If there's any justice in this apocalypse, that bag of chips deserves a medal for commitment. ATMs are in the same boat. Screens still lit up, still offering to dispense 20s to nobody. Money, by the way, stops mattering approximately the exact same second the last person vanishes. All that cash sitting in vaults and wallets and couch cushions worldwide, worthless. Well, except as kindling, I guess, if you're a very specific kind of raccoon with very specific plans.
48 hours in, and the first power plants start going dark. Not all at once,
Nuclear and hydroelectric plants are actually built with something called a fail-safe. If there's no human monitoring things, the automated systems shut everything down safely on their own instead of, exploding. Shout out to whichever engineer 30 years ago sat there and thought, what if literally nobody's around one day, and built the whole protocol around that exact scenario. That guy saved the planet from becoming one giant radioactive crouton, and he's never getting a statue for it. Backup diesel generators at hospitals? Different story. Those things only carry about 24 to 48 hours of fuel tops. After that, the lights go out, and the last ventilators keeping ICU patients alive go silent. Yeah, let's not sit with that one too long. Go grab another scoop of ice cream. You earned it. Natural gas compressor stations actually hold on longer. Without anybody running them, they can chug along for a week, maybe two, before the pressure in the pipes finally drops and the gas just stops. Which means if you happen to be surviving this in, say, Chicago in January, you've got roughly 2 weeks of heat left in the tank. After that, your house slowly turns into a walk-in freezer. And I mean that literally. With no heating and a big temperature gap between inside and outside, condensation starts forming on your windows and pipes. Then that condensation freezes. Then your pipes burst. You find out about this when water starts dripping through your ceiling from the apartment upstairs where your neighbor forgot to shut off a faucet before evaporating into thin air. Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate that. Here's a number that's going to mess with you a little. Humanity currently has somewhere north of 12,000 nuclear warheads sitting in silos and submarines around the world. All of them require active human command chains to actually launch. No humans, no launch codes getting typed in, no buttons getting pushed. So relax, nobody's last day on Earth ends with a mushroom cloud. Worst case scenario, in a few decades, some of those nukes' safety and containment systems degrade without maintenance, and you get some very localized, very contained radioactive leaks in a handful of underground silos that, again, absolutely nobody's around to worry about. Somehow, the nukes end up being one of the less dramatic parts of this whole story. Wild, right? Oh, and the internet? Still technically on, in the sense that data centers running on battery backup keep humming along for a bit, but the internet was never actually one thing. It's a giant mess of servers that need cooling systems, and cooling systems need power, and power needs Dave. So server farms start overheating and shutting down in clusters within days. Somewhere a cat video is buffering forever, loading for an audience that no longer exists on a screen nobody's looking at. Also, and this one's kind of wild, elevators. If the power cuts out mid-ride, most modern elevators are built to automatically glide down to the nearest floor and pop the doors open. So no, you're not going to find some tragic elevator situation, just a bunch of empty elevator cars quietly parked on random floors all over the planet. Doors open, waiting for passengers that are never coming. Day 2 recap. Grids failing safe, hospitals are already dark, your house is icing over from the inside, the internet's dying in slow motion, and somewhere a light switch in Iceland is about to become the most important light switch on Earth. We'll get to that too.
Groceries start going bad fast, especially anywhere warm. Picture a billion refrigerators full of meat, fish, milk, all shutting off at once in 85-degree heat. Give it a week, and any big city south of the equator smells like something even a ghost would refuse to walk through. Scientists don't love admitting this, but the actual scent of the apocalypse isn't smoke. It isn't ash. It's shrimp. Rotting, room-temperature shrimp multiplied by a billion households. Meanwhile, back to the dogs. The ones that got loose day one are either finding food or banding together. Zoos are their own disaster. Enclosures are built assuming humans show up every single day, feeding, cleaning, fixing fences. Without that upkeep, a chunk of those enclosures start failing within months, and the animals just walk out. A year from now, there's going to be escaped zoo antelope wandering the outskirts of major cities and feral house cats squaring off against actual wild foxes in the park like it's some kind of turf war.
And by the way, this already happened on a smaller scale around Chernobyl. Decades after people evacuated, wildlife didn't just bounce back, it exploded. Wolves, moose, rare bird species. Turns out, remove the humans and the place becomes a 5-star resort for literally everything else. Here's a stat for you. The Chernobyl exclusion zone today is one of the most biodiverse regions in all of Europe, which is a hilarious, slightly insulting way of the planet telling us maybe the radiation wasn't the problem here. Maybe it was just us. Let's talk about farm animals real quick, because this part's rough, but you gotta know it. Cows, pigs, chickens, literally billions of them all over the planet locked inside barns and factory farms that only function because a human shows up to feed them and open the gates. A lot of them don't make it past the first couple weeks, but the ones on smaller, more traditional farms with fences that are actually climbable or breakable, those guys get out. And weirdly enough, cows do surprisingly fine on their own. Turns out, cows have been perfectly capable of grazing and surviving without a clipboard-holding farmer since, well, forever. We just forgot that part. And your pet goldfish? Yeah, sorry buddy, that one didn't have a fighting chance from day one. Same goes for anything in an aquarium relying on a filter and a heater. Tropical fish tanks worldwide are basically little life support pods, and once the power's gone, most of them don't last more than a couple days. Parrots and other pet birds have slightly better odds since a lot of them get accidentally let loose from open windows and broken cages within the first week, and in warmer climates, some genuinely make it. There are already wild parrot colonies living in cities like London and Chicago today, all descended from escaped pets. So, somewhere out there, decades from now, a solid chance a flock of very confused, very colorful parrots is just casually living in the ruins of a Walmart parking lot, having the time of their lives.
By now, basically every major power grid on Earth has gone dark. The only light left is the moon, the stars, and a handful of weird geothermal outliers, like, say, Reykjavik, Iceland, which runs almost entirely on geothermal power that doesn't need a human standing there flipping switches. So picture this, the entire planet pitch black, except one glowing little city in Iceland sitting there lit up like a Christmas tree nobody remembered to unplug. Fun fact while we're up here, without all that city light pollution drowning it out, the Milky Way is visible again with the naked eye from almost anywhere on Earth, which is kind of poetic. Billions of people lived and died without ever once seeing their own galaxy, and now the planet sees it clear as day, every single night, forever. Houses with no heat and burst pipes start rotting from the inside. Moisture plus warmth is basically a 5-star hotel for mold and fungus. A year in, your average city apartment looks like a horror movie set, except it's real. Black mold streaking down the walls, warped floorboards, actual mushrooms growing straight out of the baseboards. Yeah, mushrooms growing out of your baseboards. Nature doesn't wait for permission, man. It doesn't knock. Meanwhile, every backyard swimming pool on the planet is turning green. No chlorine, no filter running, no pool guy showing up on Tuesdays. Algae takes over in a matter of weeks, and within a year, that pristine blue rectangle in the suburbs is basically a small, murky pond, complete with mosquito larvae throwing a rager. Streetlights, by the way, are one of the last things to go and the place is still hanging on to power. Solar-powered streetlights in particular just keep quietly doing their job, turning on at dusk, off at dawn, lighting up empty sidewalks for whatever wildlife happens to be wandering through at 2 a.m. It's honestly kind of sweet. Nobody asked them to keep working. They just do. Coastal cities have their own creeping problem going on this whole time, quietly in the background. Drains. Without regular clearing, drains clog up with leaves and debris within a single rainy season, and low-lying neighborhoods start flooding every time it rains hard, same as they always threatened to before anyone was around to complain to the city council. A decade in, plenty of coastal downtowns are basically permanent shallow lakes at high tide, complete with fish swimming through what used to be a Starbucks drive-thru.
Roofs are the weak point of literally every building on the planet. Weatherproofing, seals, shingles, all that stuff needs constant tiny repairs, usually either from the homeowner or the city. Skip that maintenance for 10 to 20 years and roofs start actually leaking. Real leaking, water and snow getting in, and the structure starts falling apart for good. Quick math for you, a normal modern house is engineered to last 50, maybe 100 years, with regular upkeep. Pull the upkeep, and that timer doesn't just tick a little faster, it collapses. Roofs rot out in a couple decades instead of a century. Around the same time, in big cities, windows start popping out of skyscrapers. Seals dry out, temperatures swing, and one day a half-ton pane of glass just detaches from the 40th floor and shatters on an empty street below. A sound that gets heard by approximately 0 people on planet Earth. Gardens and parks, meanwhile, are having the time of their lives. Lawns that used to get mowed every Saturday are now waist-high meadows within a single summer. Golf courses, thousands of acres of obsessively manicured grass across the planet, turn back into actual wild fields in a year or two. And honestly, they look better for it. Nobody's slicing a ball into the rough anymore, mostly because there's no more rough. It's all rough now. Deer, by the way, absolutely thrive during this stretch. No cars to dodge, no hunting season, unlimited buffet of overgrown suburban shrubbery. Deer populations in a lot of regions probably triple within the first decade alone, which, fun twist, actually creates its own mini food chain boom. More deer means more food for those newly feral dog packs we talked about earlier. Turns out, the apocalypse has its own economy, and venison is doing great.
With windows blown out, rain and snow and seeds just wander right into buildings, no invitation needed. 30, 40 years down the line, an abandoned office tower looks like a straight-up greenhouse with actual saplings growing out of cracks in the floor. Steel rebar buried inside concrete starts rusting, and rust isn't just discoloring. Rust is expanding metal. It's basically a slow-motion grenade going off inside a wall, cracking concrete apart from the inside 1 millimeter at a time for decades. Give it 50 years without maintenance, and most modern office towers and cheaply built apartment blocks just start folding in on themselves. Not with a bang, more like a really slow, really sad collapse nobody's around to film for Instagram. Wooden houses have it even rougher, depending on climate. In humid places, think the American South or Southeast Asia, untreated wood starts rotting and getting eaten by termites and carpenter ants within just a couple decades. Drier climates are kinder. Some old wooden structures in deserts can hang on for centuries just because there's nothing around wet enough to rot them. So, weirdly, if you wanted your house to outlive you by the longest possible margin, the desert was always the smart move. Nobody tell the guy who built his dream cabin in a Florida swamp. Subway and metro tunnels underneath major cities have their own slow burn crisis going on too. Most big subway systems run massive pumps around the clock just to keep groundwater from flooding the tunnels. That's an actual full-time job every single day, forever, as long as the city exists. Cut the power to those pumps, and within days, tunnels in cities like New York or London start filling with water. Within a few years, whole sections of what used to be the world's busiest transit systems are just flooded underground rivers home to fish nobody ever expected to find swimming past a mind the gap sign. Bridges and overpasses are next on the list. Concrete bridges in cold climates go especially fast. Water seeps into hairline cracks, freezes, expands, and that crack grows until 50 to 100 years later, the whole structure just can't hold its own weight anymore. Steel suspension bridges hang on a little longer, but rust in the cables eventually wins that fight too. And one day, somewhere, with 0 witnesses, an entire suspension bridge folds into the water with a boom loud enough to wake the dead, if there were any dead around to wake. The only ones who might catch that show are the fish, who, respectfully, could not care less. Dams are their own special kind of disaster. Without engineers monitoring water levels and clearing debris, a lot of dams end up overtopping during heavy rain or spring melt. And once water starts flowing over the top of a dam instead of through its controlled channels, it erodes the structure shockingly fast. Within decades, plenty of major dams fail outright, sending a wall of water down valleys that people farmed and lived in for centuries. Whole towns downstream, empty as they already are, get wiped off the map a second time, just this time by water instead of by us disappearing. Airports don't fare much better. Runways, believe it or not, need constant maintenance too. Cracks get sealed, grass along the edges gets trimmed back so it doesn't creep onto the tarmac. Skip that for a decade or two, and every runway on Earth turns into a cracked, weed-choked strip with a few thousand commercial airplanes just sitting there, tires slowly rotting, wings collecting a decade's worth of bird nests. Somewhere, a 747 that once flew 500,000 passengers around the planet is now just an extremely elaborate pigeon condo. By the 100-year mark, most modern city construction is either partially or fully collapsed. What's still standing? Only the stuff that was built to actually last. Old stone masonry, cathedrals, fortresses. And here's the twist that's going to mess with you. The older and more primitive the building technique, the longer it survives without upkeep. A modern skyscraper falls apart faster than a medieval castle. Progress, it turns out, also works in reverse. Case in point, the Pantheon in Rome has been standing for about 1900 years already, and it's still basically intact. Thanks to a special self-healing Roman concrete recipe we're still not 100% sure how to replicate. Meanwhile, a shiny glass office tower built in 2020 might not even make it 100 years without a maintenance crew. Rome's ancient engineers somehow outbuilt us using rocks, lime, and volcanic ash. No blueprint software required.
1,000 years out, and even the toughest stone cathedrals, the ones that survived centuries only because someone kept repairing them, finally give up without that help. Cracks, erosion, tree roots busting through foundations, even humanity's most jaw-dropping monuments turn into the same kind of scenic ruins we already associate with ancient temples today. Speaking of plastic, a regular plastic bag or bottle takes anywhere from 20 to 500 years to break down into microplastics, depending on the type and the conditions. So right around this 1,000-year mark, most of the plastic humanity ever produced has finally fully broken down and blended into the soil and the ocean, for real. Good news, no more plastic bags cluttering up abandoned supermarket shelves. Bad news, there's no more supermarkets either. Even the Statue of Liberty, copper-clad, tough as nails, eventually gives in around this 1,000-year mark. Her internal iron skeleton, the framework holding her up, rusts and expands, just like the rebar in every collapsed office tower, until one day her whole structure just can't hold its own pose anymore, and she topples into New York Harbor. Somewhere out there, if any fish have opinions, this is probably their Mount Rushmore. By this point, basically every visible trace of a city on the surface is gone. Forests and grasslands have completely swallowed up whatever used to be a metropolis. If an alien ship flew over Earth right now with regular old eyeballs, they wouldn't notice a thing. Just a green planet, rivers, forests, business as usual. But if that alien ship had ground-penetrating radar, which, side note, we already have and it's called LiDAR, they'd find perfectly straight geometric shapes buried under all that soil, straight roads, rectangular foundations, because straight lines just don't happen naturally, and that's the dead giveaway that a civilization used to be right there. Fun fact, we've literally done this exact thing recently, using LiDAR to find supposedly mythical ancient cities buried under jungle canopy in Central America and Southeast Asia. Cities we had no idea were there, hiding under what looked like completely untouched forest. Same exact thing happened with Angkor Wat in Cambodia, an entire sprawling temple city that the jungle just quietly swallowed for centuries until explorers stumbled onto stone towers poking out of the tree line like something out of a movie. Turns out that's not a rare fluke. That's just what happens to every single city, every time, given enough centuries and zero maintenance crews. Angkor Wat is basically a preview of what your hometown's going to look like in 10,000 years. Here's another fun one from the We Already Know This Happens file. Back in the 1990s, archaeologists found the ruins of Göbekli Tepe in southern Turkey, described at first as just a weird mound with no visible structures at all. Turned out that mound was hiding the oldest known building on the planet, buried for over 11,000 years, completely invisible from the surface. Which means everything you're picturing right now, cities swallowed by forest, buried under just a few feet of dirt, already has a real-world receipt. We just don't usually think about the fact that it can happen to us too. All right, now let's circle back to the dogs, like I promised.
Dogs that survived those first chaotic weeks and went feral, give it tens of thousands of years and they don't evolve back into wolves. They turn into something brand new. We've actually already got a living example of exactly this, the Australian dingo. That's not a wolf that went wild. That's a domestic dog that went feral around 5,000 years ago and has since become its own entirely separate species, hunting in packs as well as any wolf out there. So now picture Dingo 2.0, the descendants of literally billions of house pets gone feral all at once all over the planet. 100,000 years from now, we're not talking Labradors and Dachshunds, we're talking a brand new apex predator that reclaimed ecological niches worldwide. And somewhere, deep in their genetic memory, they're still going to randomly wag their tail at something that looks kinda like a stick. Humanity built the pyramids, split the atom, landed on the moon, and our longest-lasting legacy is going to be a dog that runs faster after a rabbit. Cats, meanwhile, don't even bother evolving into anything new. They were basically already perfectly designed for this. Turns out, house cats are just tiny, extremely polite wildcats that decided hanging out with us was a good deal while it lasted, and now that the deal's off, they just go back to doing exactly what they always did, minus the free food and the guy who talks to them in a baby voice. Honestly, cats called this outcome day one. That's why they never seemed that impressed with any of us.
Earth's tectonic plates are always moving, roughly at the same speed your fingernails grow, a couple inches a year. Sounds hilariously slow, but stretch that out over millions of years, and it's enough to literally drag entire continental edges down under the mantle in a process called subduction. Which means even the last remnants of us buried underground, old mine shafts, subway tunnels, those nuclear waste vaults some Scandinavian countries built to hold radioactive material safely for tens of thousands of years, eventually get dragged down too, melted, recycled by the planet itself. Earth, it turns out, is basically the only known machine built for completely erasing evidence. But here's the twist. The planet can never actually erase us all the way. We've found fossils of living things hundreds of millions, even billions of years old. The oldest known fossilized life on Earth, stromatolites, are over 3 billion years old. If nature can preserve traces of basic bacteria for 3 billion years, it's absolutely going to hang on to a handful of fossilized human bones for a few hundred million. Easy. Somewhere down the line, long after we're gone, some new species is going to dig one of us up. Maybe descendants of dolphins, maybe crows, maybe octopuses. Who knows? Evolution's weird like that. And they're going to invent their own version of paleontology. And one of them is going to hold up a fossilized human skull and go, wonder what these guys were even doing with all this. Completely unaware, we were asking ourselves that exact same question the whole time we were alive. So no, Earth is never fully wiping every trace of us clean. The only thing that could theoretically do that is roughly 5 billion years from now, when the sun burns through its hydrogen, swells up into a red giant, and probably swallows the Earth whole. And even then, there's a decent chance some random chunk, a fossilized finger, a stray tooth, flung off into space by some ancient cosmic disaster, just keeps drifting through the universe for billions more years after our entire planet stops existing. One last thing before we wrap this up. Undersea internet cables. There's about 800,000 miles of fiber optic cable running along the ocean floor right now, carrying basically all of humanity's internet traffic between continents. Without repair ships doing regular maintenance, ocean currents, shark bites, yes, sharks actually bite these cables sometimes, it's a documented problem, and just general wear start snapping segments within a decade or two. So somewhere down there, in total darkness, the actual physical internet is slowly going quiet, one severed cable at a time, with nobody left to send a repair crew. So here's your final tally. You, the last human on Earth, get roughly one normal day. 1 week of relative comfort, 1 month before the lights go out for good, a century before it's all ruins, 10,000 years before we vanish from the surface entirely, and 5 billion years before the planet itself calls it quits. Honestly, not bad when you think about it. Most of us barely get 80 years tops. So here's the actual question. Could you survive even the first week with 0 electricity, 0 hot water, and 0 Wi-Fi? Drop it in the comments. How many days you got in you? And don't lie to yourself, man. We both already know the answer.
Because I'll tell you right now, no Wi-Fi, day 1, you're already pacing around your kitchen like a caged animal. No hot water, day 2, you're crying in the shower for reasons that have nothing to do with the temperature. And by day 3, you're seriously considering befriending whatever raccoon just wandered into your backyard. Because at this point, honestly, the company would be nice. So yeah, 8 billion people gone in a night, and it still took the planet 5 billion years to finish the job completely. Kind of puts your Monday into perspective, doesn't it? See you in the next one.